Okay, nice.
Yeah. We're growing in this world. Just gonna try to replicate Eric's. Hi everyone, welcome to Potluck Food Talks. As you can hear from my voice, this week it's not Eric. Eric is our long lost son. He's somewhere in Asia, Singapore, Malaysia. I have no idea where he's at. So he gave us the duty and the task to record an episode without him. And Phil, I think we're gonna manage pretty well without him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, probably better, to be honest, we
Yeah.
we all knew that this was going to happen at some point, and that we'd have to, after a few months of absence, go and rescue him from like an opium den in Singapore Harbor or something.
No, but hey, this is will be the 55th episode. So the guy did pretty well for 54 episodes in a row every Monday. You got to give him credit for that, for sure. So from the cold Berlin, Eric, I hope you're eating delicious food. I hate all the posts that you're posting online with all those delicious things that you're putting in your mouth. But yeah, let's do a show. This week's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit to Phil. For the people who don't know, I'm Xander. I produce the show, I edit the show, and I have to listen to these two guys talking every week and cutting out all the nonsense that they say. But I'm super happy to have the opportunity to talk to Phil one-on-one, because in my opinion, he's an extremely talented chef. He's been doing this forever. He's been in some of the most exciting restaurants and even one of the most legendary restaurants in the world. And I can relate because my job also is very, food related. I do commercials for food, for big food brands. So yeah, at some point we both decided that food was more or less our vocation. But I wanna ask you, Phil, like, when did you realize that, food, food was going to be the poison? Food, like how they say, like, find something that you love and let it kill you. So when did you realize that food was your poison and that you wanted to become someone who did food rather than being a lawyer or an accountant?
Yeah, it was pretty early on for me. It was I made the decision when I was about like 15. And I was like dead set on it. And it was like, there were several factors like playing into it. I come from a family that like is very passionate about cooking. So I grew up with food and cooking and going out to eat being like a very important part of everyday life, like when we were having breakfast, we talk about what we should have for lunch and for dinner,
Mm-hmm.
and so there was just a very natural love for it. It was like very ingrained, and we used to go to markets and to like small suppliers, because we were also kind of in a little bit of a rural area in Spain. and so that's like fascinated me as a kid straight away. I always like used to love and enjoy also kind of like moving through the seasons and like being excited, just kind of like how you're excited for Christmas, that you're like excited for autumn or for summer or like for whatever, because like new like products would come. And then I was kind of like I don't know, I was really drawn to theater for a long time. And then I started cooking by myself more and more when I was sort of like 12, like 11,
Hold
12.
on. What do you mean with theater? That you wanted to become an actor or
Yeah,
what?
yeah, for a long time I thought I was going to study drama, because I went to a British school also, and
Oh, okay.
not necessarily become an actor, but just work in theater. And I don't know, because I really saw myself there. But and I was really into music and all those sorts of things, because I wanted to do something sort of something artsy. And but then I started cooking more and more at home. And I was really, really enjoying it. And I got into watching cooking shows more and more. Back then it was like, you know, the Jamie Oliver shows. Back when Jamie was still good, you know, there was a time when Jamie was really good. Now he's gone kind of bananas, you know.
Yeah.
Mm.
But do you think it's, you know, like growing up as a kid, being introduced to food, you know, something that is more than just like a, you know, packaged meal, like being exposed to market, to like actually having vegetables in your hand, trying out different flavors, trying things that are spicy, acidic, whatever. Does like do you think that it is essential for someone to be raised eating a certain variety of foods to become interested in like eating and eating experiences?
No, not at all. I think there's that like, and there's also the complete opposite. You know, I feel like I know some people that have like grown up in a family where there wasn't like a very big cooking culture, where there was a lot of like instant meals and blah and something, and um, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But then like if you have a desire for something else, you know, and you grow up in that environment, you have to like the desire to break out of that, you know, and then you chase the complete opposite, right? It's like kids that grow up in a very conservative household that then just go and, you know, go a little bit nuts and go to, you know, punk rock concerts and
Mm-hmm.
that sort of stuff, you know, or the complete opposite, you know, people that grow up in a very messy household and then grow up to be super, you know, neat and tidy and clean, and they don't want anything at all
Yeah.
chaotic.
No,
And
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, but for me it was like that, and I really loved it. And then I read, you know, I mean, I was a very rebellious teenager, you know, and then I read Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidentials,
Okay.
and I think it was, and that really gripped me. Also, I don't want to say that that's what made me become a chef, because I can actually really tell you what made me decide to become a chef. But that all kind of like got me into it, to the idea of sort of like, okay, being a chef might be like really cool, you know. I can work in food. I can work anywhere in the world. I can travel, you know. But actually, what
Kind of like
really,
that pirate spirit of like whoever cooks, whoever can provide for people, you can do it anywhere and you can do it your way and you can like not give a fuck about anything because you know the kitchen is sort of like it's sort of unique environment where like it's just different than the rest of the world. I mean,
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, that was a huge aspect for me as well. I was like really sort of like freedom seeking um child, you know, like I really wanted to kind of break out and just live, you know, and do it all and travel and yeah. But then actually what really made me decide to become a chef, where I really took like made the decision, was because I was thinking about it a lot. And I was really unsure, because I also had this pressure that I wanted to start as young as possible. I didn't want to, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to finish the last 2 years of high school, or whether I just wanted to go um, after my what do you call it, in the British system, it's the GCSEs. It's like, you know, before your abi, whatever, you know.
yeah, basically like a pre-high schools or like a thing where you have a certain high school degree but not at the academic level, something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Um, and I was very much into Buddhism and like Zen, you know, Zen philosophy, and you know, I still am. And the idea of doing something professionally, where I could have a closed cycle every day, and every day I would go into work and I would make something with my hands, starting from zero, and improving myself every day, like bit by bit by bit by bit, and then starting that all again, and it's like gone, because you make a plate of food, somebody eats it, it's gone, you know, no matter how
Hmm.
much time you spend doing it. You know, if you spend 2 months painting a picture, you know, it's there and it remains there. But like with a
Yeah.
plate of food, it's gone, and that's kind of like weird and frustrating, because you put so much work into it. But it's also very nice, because
and only one person gets to enjoy that one plate. No, it's not like you can have 1,000 people all, you know, trying out that one thing that you did. If you want 1,000 people to enjoy your creation, you will have to replicate it 1,000 times and 1,000 times in the same quality.
yeah, exactly. And it's also the acceptance of imperfection, you know, that it's like you try to get it perfect. With the painting, you can always go like a little bit here, a little bit there. I guess there's also an acceptance of imperfection because you can overpaint a painting, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's the same with like editing film, you know, it's sort of like a little bit here, a little bit there, and what about this and what about that? And then if you don't stop, it's just like a whole big mess, right?
No, for sure. I mean, like there are so many different art forms where you can edit it forever, like writing, making a film. But foods, you know, once you start cooking it, it also starts dying. So there's a limited time that you can like prepare something. Obviously, if you know, like we were doing the spice rub for the live show for the sandwiches, and I remember you adding stuff and you know, like kind of like getting closer to what you wanted to do. And it was like a longer process of trial and error until you got it right. But yeah, I guess when you're filleting a fish, you know, once it's cut, you know, it's done. You know, if you cut it like a donkey, like Gordon Ramsay would say, it's, you know, you have to either get a new fish or see what you do with that, you know, ugly piece of fish that you just sliced.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's actually a really good example because you only get one cut, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's never going to be perfect, you know? And that idea of like being able to do that every day and also the like never ending like aspect of it, that really appealed to me as a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided to drop out of high school and move to Berlin and just start cooking, you know?
Nice. Is there any particular eating experience that made you go, okay, wow, like I get it, like I know what food can be now? Was there a restaurant, a dish as a kid, like eating some sort of food, like was there any flavor adventure that you had that you still remember that was the one was like, okay, this is what I want to do for people, what I'm feeling right now, I want to replicate?
Not really. I mean, I was, like I said, I was very, very fortunate. Like my family cooked really amazing. Like my grandma was an amazing chef. Um, at home, and my, you know, my parents, like they cooked really great food, like especially like Italian food.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like downright delicious, you know. And then my grandparents, they spent a long time in Asia. So especially Japan. So, you know, we used to have like tea time at our house, like on the weekends, and drink like Japanese green tea. And so I got introduced to all these like different, you know, cultural aspects, and it made me really sort of like, I really, you know, enjoyed it. And, you know, we used to go out and eat, you know, like I was eating sushi as a kid and go to like sukiyaki restaurants and stuff like that, and was exposed to it really early on. And this like magic of like what food is, you know, tied in with sort of like cultural identity over the world, like I just like fascinated me, you know.
And once you start like sort of like your cooking adventure, you know, starting in, you know, crappy kitchens and working yourself up to better and better kitchens until you know, you have some like legendary restaurants that you work at. Can you summarize a little bit like um was this, you know, traveling around the world, working in different places, learning a lot, like looking in hindsight, was it what you were expecting, you know, when you decided as a 15-year-old kid to start this whole thing?
Yeah, pretty much. To be honest with you, like, yeah, I mean, I said it earlier, like I was very fortunate, you know. I started very young, and I did a lot of the things that I was like dreaming of doing, like at a very early stage. I mean, I didn't start in like a shitty kitchen. Like I started in a shitty place, you know, in a very good kitchen. But yeah, I was very driven and very determined. And like when I got to Berlin, I just wrote to like the most accoladed restaurant here, and just kept, it was a 2 Michelin star restaurant here in the center of the city, like very French.
And you were like 16, 17, something like that, right?
I think it was 15 actually. I think it was
Oh
15
wow,
on the verge of on the verge of 16. Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
But that's cool, you know. It's like a lot of people that I talk about, they say like, dude, I envy people who know what they want to do. And obviously, if at 15, if you're able to map out your life and you say like, okay, this is my goal, this is what I want to do, um, then it's like great because you can just look up for the best restaurants and write a million emails until like the best restaurants accept you. Or how
Yeah,
was it for you?
yeah, for sure. And that's what it was like for me. You know, I was like I because I kind of like I read like certain things and I was kind of into the world already. I was very prepared for being sort of like, all right, it's going to be really tough. It's going to be really difficult. So like I went to that restaurant and part of a big, huge luxury hotel. And I showed up and I said, I'd like to speak to the head chef, and the head chef wasn't there. And they were sort of like, yeah, we can give a message to him, you know, but I was like, no, I'd like to speak to him personally. And I just kept showing up like every day for like 2 weeks until he was there, you know. In hindsight, I know now that he was there like once a month and
Mm, yeah.
well, never. But yeah, and I introduced myself to him and he said, all right, come by. And I started there and just kind of like, you know, just washing dishes and cleaning and like working in like the staff kitchen, like for the staff food and stuff. I didn't get to like touch anything for the first couple of months, but I was just happy to be there. And I was just like really determined to work hard.
But could have like, did you train yourself? Did you just like go to the market and buy a bunch of chicken and like learn how to debone a chicken when you were 15? Or did you just say, okay, I want to learn, and you just went to a restaurant and said, teach me?
I mean, I think I knew like quite a lot already when I was like when I started. I mean, I didn't have the ability to do a lot of things, but I knew how to debone a chicken, like more or less, right? Not like it's not like I've never seen this before. What do I do? You know?
Yeah.
Um, and you know, like also like basic cooking terms. I read like a lot of cookbooks and I watched a lot of stuff, and like I knew what a bechamel was and what a roux is. You know, like nowadays, you know, I talk to people that work in a like I don't want to say chefs, but like people that work in kitchens, and you know they don't know these terms. And I'm not saying that you should be like a nerd and stuff, but it's sort of like, well, it's like basics, you know, it's like very very basic stuff. Um, and I knew all of that, like the mother sauces, and I knew what dashi was, and you know, I was just very interested, and I like wanted to absorb knowledge, and I did that before, so I feel like I was at a good spot when I started. What I where I wasn't on a good at a good spot was kind of like my not my attitude, but like my ability to I had a hard time being this sort of like, because there's a lot of unfair treatment in these sorts of kitchens, especially back in the day, you know.
Mm.
And in the very beginning, because I also went to a very, very tough restaurant at the beginning, you know, I was really sort of like, it was a hard time for me because I wanted to work hard and I was really passionate, but at the same time, you know, like everybody super shits you and you're like, well, it really kind of puts you down.
Like that whole old school hierarchy way of running a kitchen, that the new guy or the lower person gets to eat a lot of shit, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there, I mean, obviously Anthony Bourdain could be, you know, like inspired you to this whole thing, and I'm sure you have a lot of idols. Uh, do you still have any, you know, do you still have idols? Are there people that you know, idolized until a certain point until you didn't anymore, which I also think is something very common. Um, were there people that say, okay, if I become the next Andoni in 10 years, you know, that would be my goals. Like what's your relation to, you know, your heroes and idols?
Uh, um, you know, they say never meet your heroes. I think that's I I didn't really like think much of that saying until like it happened to me, and it happened to me a few times. Um, I don't know, like I don't really want to drop names, you know, but there were
You
chefs
can you
really
can make up a name like you normally do it in the line episodes.
um you know, there are, you know, chefs that I really idolized. They were like these mythical beings, these like master craftsmen and artists, and and I would like read, what they've done, and like look them up and be super inspired by them. There's one example of this, like a very, very famous 3 Michelin star chef in Paris that I just found absolutely amazing, for years and years and years. And then at some point I went there and I ate there and I met him, and I was incredibly disappointed because of many reasons. For many reasons, like not necessarily because of like that the food was bad, but it was like, yeah, it's just never meet your heroes, like it's also not their fault, they can't live up to what you imagine them to be like. You don't know them.
But it was more or less like you went there and you actually saw the real thing and you were disappointed because you were expecting more, or is it because, I don't know, their attitude, their approach?
There was a situation that was just like disappointing to me, like we had a conversation and he kind of made me like a promise, and then he didn't deliver on the promise, and I was just like very let down, Yeah.
Can you say what that promise was?
Basically I brought him a gift, and to the restaurant, and as you sometimes do, and
like a bottle of wine or something like that.
I brought him some like homemade wild rose vinegar from England. So like foraged wild roses, like preserved in vinegar.
Homemade, as in made by you, or as in like you knew someone who made really good
wild rose vinegar? As in made by me.
Okay, nice.
As in like foraged and made by me, with like rose hips and like rose petals and like a nice little glass bottle, like that. And he was like, "Oh wow, thank you so much." And then he was like, "I'm going to make something special with this for you today." And I was like, "Oh, wow." Like I didn't expect that. I just wanted to bring like a little something, and then we went through the meal and, he didn't. And it just kind of put like the stamp. Now, apart from the fact that service, like the front of house treated us really, really poorly.
Oh, really?
And
even though you were sort of like a guest, that I don't know, like how did you connect with him? Like how did you, it's not, I guess it's not normal that you go to a restaurant of that caliber and have a direct meeting with the chef. Like how did that come about?
No, there it's actually relatively normal. He kind of greets the guests. He has a little conversation with them. And yeah. And so it was the mixture of that, the front of house treating us really poorly, and then the food being like also incredibly expensive. It was good. There were some highlights that I still remember, but it wasn't like, some things were really good, and then other things were like all right. And but
that's Phil. That's because you became so good that you eat this and you go like, I could have done this better.
No, it's not about that. But if you pay like 500 quid per person, then like it needs to be like exceptional, because that's the thing also with like these fine dining places, that like I feel like it often really takes away from the food, because you could do something and be amazing, but you charge somebody 500 quid for it, and they're going to look at it with a very critical eye. And it like already, that's why I don't like these like high money places anymore, because it takes away so much of the enjoyment. Maybe that's just because I'm poor, right? But like, but I don't know, because it's like, and nobody can tell me, oh yeah, but it costs that much to make it. No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. It's just the name and everything and blah. And, but yeah. And then, I went out and he was like, all right, see ya. And I went out and I was just kind of like, this was just a really kind of shitty experience,
Yeah, that sucks. But I know for a fact that you have very high standards. I mean, you are now head chef, or have been head chef in various places. And obviously you bring your own philosophy and your style and, way of doing things, like a way of working with your team, and a way of, let's say, a vision of what you want to present to the guests. Talk a little bit about that. Like, what is you as a chef? What's your approach? Like what you like doing? Tell me a little bit about like the places that you might have quit because they didn't meet the standards that you really wanted to achieve.
Oh, so sorry, sum up the question again.
Sorry, I just like bundled like 6 questions into one. No, I just wanted to like, talk a little bit about um, your high standards of creating food, and let's just talk about like what's your approach as a head chef. When designing a culinary experience for a guest in your restaurant.
Okay. Um, I mean, that's changed a lot over the last years for sure. I mean, in terms of sort of like the standards that I have in the kitchen or with a team, and the culinary experience that the guest experiences, those are of course connected, but they're a little bit different for me in my mind, because I think of the sort of like guest experience in one thing, and then I think of the standards that we set in the kitchen, and also the team dynamic and the culture that you create inside of a kitchen. I kind of see that as a separate entity that needs to get built and nurtured and cultured, and then that needs to like, and I've kind of focused on that, and from there I know that if we do that right, that good things will sprout that will affect the customer experience. Does that make sense?
Mm. Can you maybe explain it again?
So with the like guest experience, like I think of the logistics and the service, the food style, of course, the pace of
You mean
menu,
like logistics as in, the produce coming in, or as in the timing and like a
the
guest coming in,
timing.
sitting down? Okay.
Yeah, the timing, of course, is sort of like, when you think of all those things, it's kind of like, well, of course, the first thing that comes, that you have to think about is the quality of produce. I think that comes before anything, when you think of a culinary concept. Um, and of course, you have like a certain style that you cook in that you like, etc. But on the other side is the work culture that you create, and that's like the beating heart of the restaurant, because a restaurant lives, kind of by itself. It's like this kind of like weird organism that just like beats, and people come in and come out, and they're kind of like they're guests, they kind of step into your world, and they enjoy it, and then they go out. But like for that to be enjoyable, um, you really have to cultivate a certain culture in a restaurant, and that's very, very difficult. Um, it can be fairly easy if you have like very like-minded people.
And with a culture, it's basically saying like you want people to care for the guests, like care that the guests are having a good experience, to care that every minute that the guest is, sitting there waiting, or if a dish is not, 100%, that they're not going to have a good time. And having a restaurant in that caliber, it is about, making sure that it's more than nutrition. It's about an experience. So
Yeah.
like the culture is cultivating the sense of like, I want to be as, part of forging that experience for the guest.
Yeah, for sure. That's part of it. But actually, what I mean even more is the culture between themselves, right? So, like, of course, it's super important that they care about what they put on like how they put it on the plate, and whether it's going out hot, if it looks all right, etc. But actually, that's less for. It sounds a little bit weird, probably, but that's less for the guests, and that should be more for them, right? So, like, if I'm cooking, of course, I want my guests to have a good experience and stuff. But if I like plate something neatly, I do it like for myself. I'm
Mm-hmm.
striving to improve myself, and therefore, I'm trying to make it better all the time, and that arrives at the guest table, and they hopefully enjoy it. And so I feel like when you have, when you do that, and when you create like an environment in a kitchen where there's no toxic behavior, where there's an open conversation about the craft that you're doing, about the quality, about the produce, about, further development, you create a very productive and positive environment. And I think, I really believe that impacts the whole restaurant very, very fundamentally. If you have a kitchen that's always like, all right, it's not sort of like, hey, like, what the fuck is this? This is wrong, you have to do this again, and just kind of bashing people, and then they're just like robots, and they just like create, like replicate and replicate and replicate. But if you keep an open conversation, you're sort of like, hey, this the sauce tastes kind of sweet. Like, what's the reason, And you kind of look at it and you realize the onions are a lot sweeter than they usually are, because produce changes. And you just have an open conversation. You're sort of like, hey, maybe we should do it like this tomorrow. And then like what you have is like people coming to you and they're saying like, hey, chef, like, look, this is like this today, what should we do? And you talk with them in a very relaxed manner and in a very flexible way. Your chefs are going to develop further. There's a very organic sort of like progress for them also professionally, because they learn more and more, right? And it improves the quality of everything massively. But also, the whole vibe of the restaurant is different. We have a restaurant where there's an open kitchen, and everybody, like, it's hard work and everybody works super hard, but at the same time we're like relaxed and nobody's angry, and like we're organized to a point where the amount of work is like manageable without it being, a pain. And we go from day to day, trying to improve from day to day, and I feel like people feel that.
And I guess, like, did this style of leading your kitchen come from, working in other kitchens where this was the complete opposite, where it was this old school dictatorship, shut your mouth and just do what I tell you, even if you don't understand or don't agree what I'm telling you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can't say that I didn't used to be like that, like I became a head chef like very young. And I think that a bad style of management is most of the time it comes from an inability to do so, right? So if the last resort is what, shouting, right? If your line cook makes the sauce wrong and you shout at him, what the fuck, the sauce is wrong, make it again. Like, what are you doing? Instead of being able to detach from the situation, because you're managing other things at the same time, taking the time to explain it to him, sort of kind of like managing your frustration and all the things you have going on in the back of your head, and making a decision of sort of like, what is the most productive way of communicating with this guy or this person, so that he very efficiently learns how to make the sauce right? Because like we're talking about a time pressure scenario, right? And that takes also self-control. That takes, a cool head. So that means that you have to be able to manage the things that you have to do, that you're multitasking in a very controlled way. If you're overwhelmed by all the things that you do and somebody comes to you and they're like, chef, the sauce split, and you're like, fuck, something else that I have to worry about. It's just your inability to keep calm and collected and in control. Yeah. And I think that that's the case with a lot of these shouty chefs, apart from the fact that they play a character, a lot of the especially famous chefs, they are very much capable of keeping in control, but they play a character,
Because that's cool. I think that's a great ending to the episode. This was super fun. I'm gonna stop the recording and